Well, I was originally born in Ashford, which is in Kent. I was adopted at the age of 2 and went to live with my adoptive parents in Ramsgate, where basically where I grew up for the next 18 years or so. Upbringing was all right, I suppose. I don't remember much of my childhood, but I assume it was a happy childhood. Teenage years were difficult, very difficult. I was bullied throughout secondary school for various reasons. No one has ever actually told me why, but, it could be anything from my hair to my clothes to the fact that I read a lot of books to the fact that I did well. Anything was picked on. I went to an all-girls school, which was probably in hindsight not the greatest idea ever. Girls can be very, very cruel. And then after my GCSEs, I moved to a mixed sixth form at a boys' grammar school, and it was slightly better. It wasn't terrific, but it wasn't as dreadful as the girls' school. Did my A-levels there. Applied for various universities. The nearest one was in London. And then I got accepted to the University of East Anglia, where I'm currently in my final semester before graduation in July. Met my partner at university. We still live in Norwich, but I'm hoping to get onto a Masters in Music Therapy course at Anglia Ruskin in Cambridge. So if I get that place, we'll probably move there. My mother was very, very young when I was born. She was 16, and my father wasn't around. He knew about me, and he knew that my mother was pregnant, but he wasn't really there. And my mother went to live with a man who was, shall we say, very unsavoury. He was not a nice man at all. I don't know much about him, but from what I've read, he wasn't a nice man. And eventually, my mother put me up for adoption and then took me back, and then put me up for adoption again and took me, and we went round and round like that. And eventually, a judge said that the situation at home had become bad enough that there was no leeway. I was being adopted, and that was that. So I think it was just my mother's youth and the fact that she just wasn't ready to have a child, I guess. I mean, 16's realistically too young for a child. I think I was 11 when I was first told, but I don't remember it. The first time I can remember was when I was about 16 or so. At the time, I was really angry, really, really angry. I felt like my adoptive parents had lied to me throughout my life, and I'd had a pretty bad teenage life anyway. So that, on top of everything else, was kind of the catalyst that just triggered I basically hated myself. I thought, well, who's going to want me? My own parents didn't want me. And, I had to be given to somebody else to bring up. And I did hate myself. I hated my parents, both sets of them. I was just really angry. I mean, it really, really hurt to be told your parents aren't your parents. But I think now, having met I say I've met them. I've met my biological mother and spoken to my biological father. I think it was for the best because, even now they're one of them's nearing 40, the other one's mid-30s. I'm sure they're very lovely people, but they didn't want to know. They didn't want to know me. They didn't want, And I think it was probably for the best in the end. I mean, it still hurts to know that I have biological parents out there, one of whom has children. So I also have half-siblings as well. But at the end of the day, it's not my decision to make. It's their decision. And I've always said, if they want to talk to me again, if they want to try again, then the door is always open. But I'm not going to put myself through heartbreak for people who don't want to know. It started initially when I went to secondary school, so when I was about 12 or 13, and I was a very naive child, but I knew I was being bullied because the primary school I went to, everyone was generally nice. I mean, you got the odd joke and the odd complaint, but no one bullied me. And I knew I was being bullied because I knew it wasn't right, but I didn't know why. And it was really tough to deal with that, to go into school on a daily basis and have everybody calling you names or, throwing your books around. One girl, I've played the flute since I was about 11 or so, and one girl actually stole my flute and put it in her locker, which culminated in me running around the entire school trying to find it. And to hear that on a daily basis is just really soul destroying. There is nothing like being bullied to break a person down. I mean, I hated the fact that I was clever. I hated the fact that I was good at things. And I went inwards. I thought, well, if all these people are saying all these bad things about me, then it has to be true. Because why would they say it otherwise? And I've only just started to heal from that, and I've only just started to say, okay, maybe what they said wasn't true. Maybe it was just people saying it. But, I mean, 7 years, people say to me, why can't you just get over it? And I turn around to them and say, I went through 7 years of it. 7 years, most days of the year, of people saying, you're ugly, you're too skinny, you're a nerd, you're frigid, things like that. And when you hear that on a day-to-day basis, eventually it sinks in and becomes the truth for you, almost like a gospel. You believe it so much that when someone says, well, actually, you're not like that, you're a lovely person, you either think they're lying or you think they're just saying it out of pity. And for a long time, I thought any person that I went out with, any boyfriend that I had, was literally just with me out of pity. I mean, even up until about 6 or 7 months ago, I thought my current partner was with me out of pity. Because he thought, I don't know, I thought people were with me because I couldn't cope on my own. I thought people were with me out of pity. I thought they were people who had nothing left to lose. You literally believe that you are the lowest of the low and you cannot ever achieve anything, and you feel like anything you do achieve will never be good enough. And you just give up on yourself, and you just get through every day and get through this year, get through next year. But there's always this little bit of you inside that's just hoping, praying that things get better. But then on the flip side, when they do get better, you don't trust that things will stay that way. You think, oh, things are good now, but in a few months it will be back to square one and everything will be horrible again. But, yeah, I mean, bullying is just the worst thing ever. And I really, really sincerely hope any children I have never go through it. I mean, it wasn't the children's... Well, I say it wasn't the children's fault. It was their fault for choosing to act on what they thought. But what they thought was bred out of ignorance and not understanding and not trying to understand. So, in a way, I blame the bullies, but in a way, I don't. I blame them for doing what they did. But what they did was bred out of the fact that I was different and they didn't know why. And I didn't know why. I just knew that I was different. And, I mean, it wasn't until I was 20 and I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which is a social and communication disorder, that piece finally went into place and I could look back and go, so that's why that happened. Because they certainly didn't know, I didn't know. I mean, I don't really blame anybody for what happened, but I wish it hadn't. It's about 2 years in, it was 2005, so I would have been about 14, 15. And I'd actually been taken to see... the bullying had got so bad that I had taken some very inappropriate actions to get it sorted, and the school had referred me for anger management. And it was then that I was told I might possibly have an autism spectrum disorder and possible attachment disorder, which would have been caused by the adoption. And it was then that they had to explain to me what attachment disorder was. And I then asked my mum about it because they said it could be from me being taken away at a young age. And of course, I couldn't remember when I was last told because I was only 11. And I asked my mum about it and she said, oh, she basically told me that I was adopted. So, It was pretty hard to hear, and it was, I mean, I know my parents told me when I was younger, but at the time, it was really hard to hear it come from a professional first, rather than my parents. But I am assured that they did tell me. It was just probably when I was about that big and can't remember. Despite what they've done, they brought me into this world. You know, my father, you know, I have half of his DNA and half of my mother's DNA. And for me, I can't just kick them out of my life because they don't care, because they will still be there. They will still be part of my past and part of my life. And for me, they created me. You know, my adoptive parents raised me and did a fantastic job of it. But without them, I wouldn't be here. You know, without my biological parents, I would not be sitting here. So I think it's because I have respect that they created me. You know, I mean, I don't like what they've done and I don't like their behaviour, but they made me. I did well at GCSE. I got 5 A's, a B and 5 C's, which was pretty good for a grammar school. I was mostly interested in music, still am, and creative writing, so poetry, stories, mostly because it provided an escape. You know, if I was reading and writing about a fairy in a magic castle somewhere, I didn't have to deal with what was happening. I could shut myself off from it, and for that half hour or an hour or however long, everything was all right. Everything was right with the world. And then it was sort of like a de-stressing. I'd read for hours about anything, and then I'd come back and I'd be more able to deal with what was going on. About my degree, well, it's a music degree, 3 years, final year. There's practical and theoretical elements. You can, for the first year, you have to do a mixture of practical and theoretical, and then in your second year and third year, you have to do several modules in the degree, but you have an option of doing a module outside the degree. So last year I did British Sign Language to level 1, and this year I'm doing a module on witchcraft, magic and belief in early modern Europe, which is very long to say. And it's really good, actually. It teaches you about different styles. You have the option to learn about different styles, and if you do performance, then you are able to do a recital. You can do various musical things. We have something called Music at One, which is on a Friday at a local venue, and you go along, you pay a small fee, and you hear music students or other people play. And it's interesting for me. I mean, I've always been drawn more towards the theoretical side of music. I'm not a natural born performer, and I like looking at how music can affect people, you know, how it can help people, mostly because it helped me at a really difficult time. I mean, I'm doing my final year dissertation and it's on music therapy and autism, and seeing whether a reclassification of what I have would be reflected in music therapy practice, and if so, why it should be or why it shouldn't be. And it's so interesting looking at how music affects people, how it helps people, how it brings people together. I mean, you know, when you hear nasheeds, or if you go to a Christian church, when you hear hymns, you know, music brings people together. And I like seeing how it does that. I mean, that's the most interesting part of my degree, doing my dissertation. My mother's Catholic and my father's Church of England. They don't go to church. They pray, I suppose, in their own way. I've never really asked them about it. My experiences of religion in the family come from the fact that I was raised a Christian until I was 12, and I was christened and baptised and confirmed. Went through all that rigmarole. And then I stopped believing in Christianity after a family bereavement, and then I sort of drifted. I went through phases of picking bits from different religions and making them into my own version of religion, I suppose. And then I flirted with paganism for a couple of years and quite liked it. I mean, I still like elements of it. I like learning about herbs. You know, I mean, I find that really useful, knowing what you can use different herbs for and so forth. And then obviously I came to Islam. My family are, well, I say they're not really that religious. We don't go to church on a Sunday. You know, we don't do all that. We don't say mass. We don't say grace. We did have Christmas and Easter, but there was not a lot that was really for a religious purpose about it. It was just a celebration of, well, just a celebration of Christmas or Easter. In reality, my family's not overly religious. I think we're probably the most liberal when it comes to religion. As I said, we had a family bereavement, and for me, after that family bereavement, I started questioning that if God was really such a good person and so forgiving and merciful, how could he do this to our family? How could he take away someone who was so central to our family? And I guess I just stopped believing that there was a God at all. I mean, I took some elements of Buddhism with, I believe in reincarnation and karma, and I took some elements. I still hold true to some values from Christianity, the most important one being the sanctity of marriage. I believe in that absolutely, and I do not believe in divorce. I would not divorce unless there were very, very extreme circumstances. But I kind of took the moral meaning from different religions, and those morals became central. So doing good to other people, helping those in need, respecting other people's differences. But I never really followed a set religion because for me, in my very illogical brain as a teenager, religion meant bad things will happen. You will have a good period of time and then you will have a massive calamity befall on you and you will suffer heartbreak and misery. And I thought, well, if I don't believe in that, then it will still happen, but it will hurt less. But on the flip side, I then found out that at the most difficult points in my life, I had nothing to hold on to. You know, everything else was falling apart around me and I had nothing to hang on to get me through it. So I then started trying to find religion again. In university, I was pagan for the first 2 years of university. I mean, the first year I was just kind of, do I, don't I, do I want to, do I not? Oh, not sure. And then in the second year, I thought, right, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go for it. So I became a full-blown pagan, you know, doing all the spells and the threefold rule and the pentacle and all that stuff. And then I heard about World Hijab Day from my friend in Australia, and I'd never worn a hijab before. And I signed up to do it and then realised I've never worn it before. So I just wrapped a scarf around my head and went out with it on. And the reaction I got was so, well, it wasn't really bad. It was just really shocking because I'd never noticed it before. And it was so shocking to me that I thought, well, you know, that's how it was over a day. Let's try it for a month and see, A, where that leads me, and B, what the public's reaction to it is, to see somebody going out day after day with a hijab on. And then the first day that I wore the hijab, I thought, well, I'll make a video diary and, you know, document how it was today, how I felt. And I literally just did it and didn't expect many people to look at it. I thought maybe 10, 11 tops. And it now has over 1,000 views. And then somebody, my friend Naz Makan, who actually founded this World Hijab Day and is the CEO of a website which sells hijabs and hijab pins and so forth, sent it to Katrin Nye at the BBC, and then she emailed me asking, would you like to do an interview about World Hijab Day? And then from there it seems I've gone everywhere. I mean, I'm in the Muslim Times, I'm on Islam, I'm in the Malaysian Digest. I didn't even know the Malaysians had a newspaper, but there you go, you learn something new. It's amazing that one person's video has gone everywhere and people are talking about it. I mean, I never expected it to happen. I just thought, yeah, 10 or 11 people will see it and that'll be that. I'll just continue to write it and maybe a few people will be interested. And now it turns out that my story, which I update daily because it's like kind of like a blog, has had over 1,000 views. My video has had over 1,000 views. And lots of people seem to know who I am all of a sudden, and it's very strange. Well, at first I was a bit worried that it was going to fall, because I didn't have any pins to pin it down. I was a bit worried that my hair was going to show and I was going to have to keep pulling it down all the time. And then my second worry was, will I look, kind of a weird one to have, but will I look stupid wearing this? Because obviously it wasn't a proper hijab, it was just a scarf. And then I got more confident wearing it, so I was all right walking about with it. And then I noticed how people were reacting. And I just thought to myself, I feel like I should be ashamed of myself, but I don't know why I should be ashamed. I have nothing to be ashamed of. I haven't broken the law. I haven't done something ridiculous. Why am I feeling so ashamed? And it was really odd, because I'm not normally someone who goes out on the street and feels ashamed of themselves for no reason. I usually feel ashamed of myself for a reason. And then when I thought about it, I realised that I was feeling ashamed because people were not looking at me. They were, one man crossed the street as soon as he saw me. Another woman on the bus pulled her children away from me as soon as she saw the hijab. And I realised I was feeling ashamed because people were making me feel ashamed. And as soon as I realised that, I said to myself, well, that's their problem. They want me to feel ashamed. They want me to feel that big. And then I said, well, I'm not going to feel ashamed. I have not got anything to be ashamed of. I am proud of what I'm doing. I know why I'm doing it, and I'm doing it for the right reasons. And then the next day, I just walked out with it, happy as anything, and didn't care what people thought. At first, it was literally because a friend asked me to, and because I'd said I would. And then, as I realised that people were judging me based just on what I wore, I realised that actually I was doing it to say to people, Muslims have a voice. The reason you are so upset about it is because you're not listening. You are not making the link between yourself and Muslims because you see a woman walking down the street with a hijab on and you think three things. You think her husband is Muslim, she was forced to be a Muslim, and she's oppressed. None of which are true in my case. My partner is an agnostic. I was not forced to become a Muslim, and I would dearly love to see the man that tries to oppress me. I would love to see that. And for me, it then became about not silencing other Muslims and not standing up and being a figurehead for a cause. It was about saying to the general public to go and listen, to sit down, be quiet, and let somebody else tell you their story. Because I'm sure lots of people are guilty of it, either consciously or not, but we all judge people in an instant, and we shouldn't really do it. So it became about saying to find a Muslim person and talk to them and to learn about Islam before you start judging, because you can't judge someone based on what they're wearing. Some people I've judged based on their first impression, and they turned out to completely surprise me, which just goes to show you cannot judge someone just by what they're wearing. I realised that just wearing the hijab wouldn't teach me a great deal about Islam. It would teach me how Muslim women feel, maybe, but it wouldn't teach me about the religion. So I looked on my university's library for an English copy of the Quran, and I borrowed it from the library, and then I started reading it, and I'm now on chapter 5, which is the feast in English. And it just made sense, because it doesn't pretend to be more than it is. It doesn't say that, oh, so-and-so was the son of God and so-and-so did this. It just says, here is God, here are his prophets, and here are the people. And that was how it worked. God sent prophets to various countries to spread the word. He didn't send a son of God to be the be-all and end-all of religion. It's a lot more reasonable and a lot more realistic, because in the Bible you hear that Jesus was the Son of God who was sent to save mankind, end of. It doesn't mention any of the other prophets. Whereas in the Quran, It says, yes, there was the prophet Jesus. Yes, there was the prophet Moses and Abraham and Isaac and so forth. But they were all prophets. They weren't sons of God. They were just sent as messengers to teach. And for me, that was central, that idea of realism, because I can't deal with something that is so unrealistic that it says that there was one man who was, definitely sent from God by him onto this planet all on his own to go and save the entirety of mankind. It can't work like that, because we hear about Prophet Jesus in the Bible when he was 5, and then there is absolutely nothing until he's about 20 odd and starts doing all these miracles. And then you hear about him until he's about 30 odd, and then he dies on the cross. Whereas in the Quran, it says that Jesus was sent to Israel to help the Israelites, and Muhammad was sent to help the Muslims. And that worked for me. If that makes sense, it worked. It made sense. And then I realised that it made sense because it was right. It was that hole that I'd been trying to fill with non-religion was actually being filled with religion. Ironically enough, I'd spent so long saying God is dreadful, God is horrible, God is this, that, the other, and saying some truly awful things about God. And then it turned out that actually God was the one person I needed. A lot of my friends and university colleagues have been really, really accepting. Obviously they ask me why, which is fine. Why are you a Muslim after all this time, which is fine. And then after I explain to them the reasons behind why I'm a Muslim and tell them the whole story, then they're fine with it. My partner has been really supportive. He's been learning about Islam. He's been reading books about it. And I kind of accidentally dumped him in our new mosque with all the Muslim brothers. But he got on fine. He was fine and happy, and he likes learning about it. My parents and family, well, I haven't actually told them I'm a Muslim yet. I will eventually. If they ask me, I'll tell them, but it's not really my number one priority. They differ on opinion. They have some rather set different views, which I don't necessarily agree with, but it is their views, and I respect that they have different views, but they're not 100% behind the endeavour at all. I think my mother is mostly concerned that I'll be attacked in the street because I'm wearing the hijab and I'm in the media, which is a perfectly fine concern to have. I can understand where she's coming from. But if I am attacked, I will obviously do what most citizens would do and inform the police. But it is slightly difficult when you tell your parents that you're doing something and you tell them why you're doing it and they can't understand and they can't accept. But hopefully one day. With every other religion I'd researched and looked into, I could always find something that I really, really could not agree with. I think in Buddhism I can't remember what it was with Buddhism, but it was something that I could not fundamentally agree with. Christianity was just too unrealistic for me. All the other religions I'd researched, I had a massive problem with. But with Islam, although I do have some problems, like the fact that I can't have a Muslim wedding because my husband is not Muslim, it's not something I fundamentally disagree with, because I can still marry my partner, and I am still marrying my partner, but it won't be in a Muslim ceremony. It's a civil ceremony, which is fine, because it actually works out quite nicely, because that way we won't have a massive religious debate of, why is my daughter having a Muslim wedding when she, it avoids a lot of religious arguments. But I'm still learning about Islam, and I'm sure I will encounter some things that I say, well, I don't really agree with that. But I don't have there is no fundamental thing with Islam that I disagree with. And I think that was the clincher for me, because if I can't fundamentally disagree with it, then it must be the right religion. I've had a lot of, mashallah, you look beautiful in your hijab, thank you for doing this, this is exactly how we feel. I have had a few imbeciles sitting behind a keyboard saying, oh, you look ugly, oh, you look stupid, this is just, white guilt or hijab tourism. But they don't know me, and they don't know why I'm doing this. So, you get the odd idiot sitting behind a keyboard playing Mr. Invincible, but most of the support I've had has been really positive, and people have said, this is a great idea, how can I get involved, how can we help, and hopefully World Hijab Day will go global and we'll do it again next year. It's the responsibility of, first and foremost, being honest and admitting that, yes, it will be hard in the beginning, but if you stick with it, it gets easier. Allah does not want you to have a hard life. And I would say that for young girls who are getting bullied because of the hijab, remember that it is not your fault and it's not your problem. It is the person who is bullying you who has the problem. And all you can realistically do in those circumstances is smile, reply civilly, and then talk to somebody you trust about it, whether that's Allah or your parents or somebody in school that you can trust. But don't do what I did and bottle it up for years. Don't do that. Go and talk to somebody and say, this is how I feel, this is what's happening, and something needs to be done. Whether it's educating our young children more about different religions, whether it's having a zero tolerance approach to religious bullying, but above all, just be proud of who you are. Allah created you this way, and although you don't know why He created you just yet, at some point in your life you will know why, and you will know what you were created for. And it has taken me a long time to realize that I was created for a purpose. I don't know what that purpose is yet, but I know I will do at some stage. And the best thing you can do is just be honest about it. Admit if you're having problems. Admit that it is difficult at times. But above all, just trust that things will get better, because they will. It might seem really horrible now. If someone's watching this and they're afraid to go into school the next day because so-and-so is bullying them, it's hard now. But in 5 years' time, that person that's bullying you will not be important in your life. They won't even feature. Half the people who bullied me are not within 100 miles of my life. They don't know what I've gone on to do, and I don't know what they've gone on to do. So just trust that things will get better. Norwich has finally got its first new mosque, yay, which is actually 2 minutes from my house. You just go across the road into an alleyway, turn left. And it was really nice, actually. Not only was I going into a new building, but it was the first time I'd gone into a mosque in any capacity. And I think it can only be described as feeling like you're coming home after years and years of travelling. I just felt this is the right place. This is where I am supposed to be. And then when I met all the sisters upstairs with all the children who call me auntie, and, I just thought, this is what's supposed to be happening. I was supposed to come here. And I don't know, it just felt so peaceful and so calm. It was almost as if, it was almost like the mosque was saying, you don't have to worry about this anymore. You know what you're supposed to be doing now, and right now this is what matters. Everything else can wait for a bit. But it was really, really nice to be there. I definitely think that this was supposed to happen in some way. I do think that I was supposed to do this, and, I firmly believe that if it wasn't meant to happen, I would have had some sort of sign, I would have been turned down for something. In terms of my relationship with my partner, if it was really not supposed to happen, we wouldn't be together now. And I do think that I was meant to do this. I was meant to be sitting here and telling people to listen to other people. As for what I'll be doing in the future, well, only God knows that, and I will probably know at some point in the future. I would like to be a practicing music therapist and use music to help people the way it helped me. And so I'd like to have that as my career. Obviously, I'd like a house and a couple of children. That would be nice. And just to continue, not really standing up for people, but drawing attention to people and saying, listen. I think I will go to my grave saying listen, and just listen to other people. Because one of the crying shames of the 21st century society is that we have forgotten how to listen. We judge people and that's it. We don't actually sit down and talk about things that we don't understand. We either try and get rid of them or we just ignore them. And you're not going to breed any tolerance by either ignoring it or removing it. I would say the first thing to do, if you want to know about Muslims, find a copy of the Quran and read it. If you haven't got a lot of time, read a few bits of it. Read about Islam, read about Muslims. And if you have any female Muslims in your area, or any Muslims for that matter, go and talk to them. Ask them why they are a Muslim. Were they born a Muslim? Did they convert? Did they revert? And for female Muslims, ask them why they wear the hijab. Because I can bet you 9 times out of 10 it's not because their husband told them to. I can bet you that. Won't be because their husband told them to. I mean, a lot of the time, one of the questions I get asked all the time is, did your partner force you to wear the hijab? No, he didn't. I would like to see him try. He did not force me to do anything. I chose to. And I think the best thing to do would be to ask why. Why this, why that? But don't go up to someone in the street and start interrogating them, Start a conversation and then maybe say, I've heard such and such, I don't know, I've heard that Ramadan is a period of fasting. Does that mean just food or does it mean drink as well? And then actually listen to the answer. Don't just ask it for the sake of asking, because you won't learn anything from that. Actually listen to the answer. Because you would be surprised how many female Muslims in the West would be absolutely offended if you considered them oppressed. Yes, there are some countries where women are forced, either culturally or for other reasons, to wear the hijab. But, the majority of Muslims nowadays are actually Western converts. And you've got to ask yourself, why? Don't just think, oh, she had to, or she was born like it, Actually, go and ask them. You might be surprised, because that woman that you think is oppressed, she might have chosen Islam. That woman you see with her husband, who's dressed in the full abaya, the full burqa, the full niqab, whatever it is, she might have chosen to do that. And unless you ask her, you're not going to know. So just go and find someone and ask. Ask as many questions as you like. Just don't ask the really stupid ones. I think it's partly upbringing. If you bring your children up to, say, I don't know, hate Jewish people, then that's how they will think for a period of time. I think the media is also mostly to blame, because people have this mentality of, if it's in a newspaper, it must be true. But then you have to think, well, the newspaper has printed quite a lot of rubbish over the years and it's not all been true. But I would definitely love to see the media have a more honest portrayal of things. All this spin and bias on things really does my head in. I can't understand why people do it. And I think just teaching our children that, yes, for my children, I will teach them, yes, mummy wears a headscarf, and no, daddy is not a Muslim, but that doesn't mean that you can't do what you want to do. I won't raise my children in a set faith. I will raise them to be good people. And then when they're old enough, if they want to follow whatever religious path they want to, as long as they've researched it and it's right for them, then that's fine. If my child came to me and said, I want to be a Buddhist, I have researched it, I've looked into it, I've been to a temple, I've spoken to some lay monks, and that's what I want to do, then I would say you go ahead and do that, because that's what's right for you. But I think bringing our children up to have set views of the world and set ideas of what's right and what's not, whilst it's good for, basic things like killing is wrong, I don't think it's right to say to them, being a Muslim is wrong, being a Jew is wrong. I think the media needs to temper its view of people and be a lot more honest in its portrayal of people. And I think parents as a whole should raise their children to be more tolerant, because the children really are the future. And if our future generations are not tolerant of other religions, we are very fast going to become a very insular society.